Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network, Grung. I'm Asbed Bedrossian, here along with Hovik Manucharyan. This episode was recorded on Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. Before we begin the show, we'd like to request that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. We're also very active on Facebook, both as a group and a page, and our podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts. All our Grung links are on our Linktree page, and we'll make sure that you can find that on all of our profile pages so that you can click on it and find us on all social media platforms. So if you like our shows, please share with your friends and follow us everywhere you're used to getting your news. All right, on with the show. Today, in this Conversations on Grung episode, our guest is Astvatsaturian Turcotte, who is an Armenian-American author, city councilor, human rights advocate, and also a refugee from her original city of Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, which her family fled as violence mounted against Armenians.
Welcome, Anna.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Anna, you frequently, I believe, appear on different TV programs or with on different media, but for the purpose of our audience, we would really appreciate if you could maybe give a short introduction of who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I am Astvatsaturian Turcotte. I was born in Baku, Azerbaijan in 1978. I came to the United States as a refugee in 1992, a refugee from Baku. And the 3 years prior to coming to the United States, we lived in Armenia as refugees during the blockade. And those experiences in the previous 2 years before coming to Armenia during the pogroms and the massacres of Armenians, I wrote a diary, which I published after my children were born in 2012. Right. And so I've been first introduced to the Armenian diaspora and the world, Armenian world as a writer. But my background is I'm an attorney. I've practiced in international criminal law sphere before settling down in Maine and with my husband and starting a family and doing a very boring banking law. So I'm a senior vice president of a small bank here in Maine. I do regulatory compliance and risk management for the bank. But in my spare time, I do humanitarian work within Artsakh in Armenia and with my foundation, Astvatsaturian Foundation. And at the same time, I do speak worldwide on what happened to my family and halls of US Congress, EU Parliament, most recently UK Parliament invited me to speak on Artsakh. So just doing a bit of everything, trying to help my people.
Yeah. Anna, how old were you when your family became refugees?
I was 11 and a half. It was September of 1989. It was right before the Baku pogroms. But during the Sumgait and Kirovabad pogroms, there were waves of violence in my neighborhood. And my mom just really didn't want to leave and didn't think that anything horrible could happen in Baku, which was a very metropolitan area. But finally, she had a really bad incident and just picked us up, got tickets, and we left. And my dad joined us in October of 89 in Yerevan. We left with, 3-4 bags, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I myself had family in Kirovabad, and I was, I guess, we were probably around the same age or close. But when we were in the U.S. at the time, in 1991 already, unfortunately, I was not politically mature enough to understand what was going on back in the homeland, despite news trickling. You're not experiencing it firsthand. But I guess when the war really started heating up a little bit more, that's when I became more interested. But that, memory of Armenians being, is my own family was also affected by this, but it's sometimes difficult, to also understand the magnitude of that. But you obviously were there in person. I don't know, what kind of parallels would you draw between what happened back then and what's happening today, if any? It's just very interesting for me.
And this is the reason why, once the book was published, I was instantly invited to speak on Capitol Hill, and I told my story. It was my first public appearance, and it was under 5 minutes, and it was so emotional for me to speak so publicly in halls of Congress. And I realized that the thing that was happening to us is happening to the children of Artsakh now. And so, at that point, 24 years later. And I thought it was very interesting how the audience reacted to my presentation. It was different than the presentations by politicians, by diplomats that spoke that day. And I thought that how effective it was to communicate that plight of Artsakhis through my own story. And that's when I decided it is scary. I do get death threats, but it was important for the people of Artsakh that someone spoke to them in the diaspora. Even in the diaspora, there was no comprehension. This was 10 years ago, understanding what Artsakh was going through. And it was almost like things are okay. If I can go there on vacation, then things are okay. And that was not the case on the borders. That was not the case in terms of their access to their healthcare, to education. They were blockaded. And so, understanding all those things, I was connecting what happened to us then will happen to them if we don't pay attention. And this message fell on some deaf ears, both clearly in United States to non-Armenians, but also to not Armenians who were so focused on the recognition of the Armenian genocide that they saw Artsakh conversation as a competition. Well, you can't talk to my state representative about Artsakh because I have to talk to him about Armenian genocide. So it was within the community there were conflicts about importance of Artsakh, and I kept pushing for 10 years and for 8 years before the war, and then it really became clear to everyone that this should have been the topic of conversation on every Armenian venue and sphere and organization and community.
When you actually, and this is very interesting, I was trying to set a limit for our discussion today, like in terms of minutes, but I don't think we'll abide by that rule. So when you were in Yerevan, obviously you were slightly more secure, but then you migrated to the US. How would you evaluate that aspect of physical security, that your life is no longer under threat? And where I want to go is this thesis set by like a lot of people who support the current government in Armenia. They're saying, well, there has never been a time when Armenia is spending more to support Artsakh, but not realizing or not forgetting, conveniently maybe, that these people are, basically in the palm of Aliyev, and that sort of, chokehold is getting tighter and tighter every day. So any thoughts you have on that sort of sense that, you're more vulnerable especially for the people who live, who are trying to live and stay on their land in Artsakh? And
yeah. And we could talk about this for hours, right? But we have a limited time. So I kind of want to quickly go from coming to Armenia after being afraid to walk to school. My parents told me to hide my face on the street when I walked to school. My grandmother started walking me to school because that was dangerous. There were days when we didn't go to school, and there were demonstrations outside of my house. There were tanks outside of my house. When things got out of hand from the Soviet perspective, there was concerns about the Azerbaijan being on the verge of leaving the Soviet Union. That's when the Soviet tanks come in and not protecting us. They told us, we're not here to protect you. We're here to ensure that there's order. So leaving that, coming to Armenia, and then seeing Armenians. This was my first time in Armenia. I was 11, and I was still traumatized by the demonstration. So every time I would see a demonstration or hear a demonstration, I would have an anxiety attack. My dad said, "This is Armenians. You can go in the center of the demonstration. You'll be safe." And so it took a little while, and then the safety aspect of it was comforting. But then we were not accepted as Armenians in the center of Yerevan. Many Baku Armenians will disagree with me. When the ones that settled in the outskirts or in other cities, they felt accepted. But I would say the majority of Baku Armenians in Yerevan weren't. We didn't speak Armenian. I was called a Turk. I was called a prostitute, Baku prostitute at 11 years old. And so, when you talk about safety, I don't know what that means, because yes, physical safety, no one's going to kill me, but am I wanted here? I don't know, possibly not. So, it's pretty controversial to talk about. And I made sure that that was kept in the book because it's part of our history. I didn't want to offend my people, but at the same time, if I removed that part of my book, which was, recollections of a child, then it wouldn't be authentic and it wouldn't be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as Artsakh, Artsakh was and is a buffer. Well, was a buffer. Artsakh was the brunt of all the violence and all of the destruction that Yerevan and the bigger cities in Armenia did not see the Armenian ethnic violence and hatred. We had family members who we called when, Sumgait, right before, actually during Sumgait, when the movement started, Miatsum movement started, and we said, "What are you doing?" My aunt called my other aunt and said, "They're going to kill us. Don't you know this?" And the relative said, "You're not patriotic enough. You're not, how can you say that? Artsakh has to join Armenia." And we said, "But you don't realize we understand, because a lot of our grandparents survived 1918 massacres in Baku, and we've lived with them. And the ones on the outskirts always felt that, Baku was safe, but in the villages, you're not safe." In the 50s, my father would visit Sunik, where his father's from, in the summer times. And in the train, you'd have Azeris stabbing children. So that the adults always sat on the aisle seat. And, so we knew that violence, that hatred still existed. In Baku, it was controlled. But,
Mm-hmm.
And now you were talking about something so provocative. They're going to kill us, and we were told we're not patriotic enough. And now those same relatives wondering, why are you advocating for Artsakh? So, Artsakh right now is in such a vulnerable state that it is no longer a buffer for Armenia. It's not even able to defend itself, and completely left to its own devices, its own fate. I feel like Armenia gave up on Armenian people. I feel like Armenia gave up on Armenian people of Baku, not only during the massacres, but also after the fact. And I understand that the situation was different economically and politically. The Soviet Union was collapsing, but those people left Armenia. We lived through the blockade. We would have stayed if there was any indication that we were wanted, and we weren't. So there was a huge brain drain of our Baku Armenians. And now you have Artsakhtsis that are left to their own fate, right. And 30 years later.
And it's that same sentiment, sometimes I feel intentionally, is being instrumentalized to achieve political gains. Like, for instance, supporters of the current regime, whether they conscious or unconscious, this hatred of xenophobia of other Armenians is being used to, maybe sort of reduce people's sentiment to help Artsakh.
Yeah, I would say there, the division, right? They're real Armenians, and you feel that in the diaspora, and you think, oh, that's very strange. We don't do that, but we do that in Armenia too. Right. You're my husband, who's not Armenian, he says, more Armenian than thou, right? I am more Armenian than thou. I speak Armenian, therefore I'm better Armenian than you, or I have a different dialect, or, I was born in Armenia, therefore I'm more Armenian than you. So it's a disease that has caused so much pain to ourselves that continues to this day.
It's only used to separate.
Absolutely. But I would say, you're talking about the current regime.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I fought tooth and nail. I fought so hard to have the Armenian government acknowledge or commemorate 30th anniversary of Baku pogroms. 30th anniversary of Sumgait pogroms. This is before the revolution. There's not one monument to Baku victims in Armenia.
Right.
There's, the 30 years of ignoring that there are 350,000 Armenians lost up to, I would argue, 50,000 apartments in the middle of Baku. How much money is that? Right. Mm-hmm. There was no collection of evidence of what we lost, of what we suffered physically, psychologically. That's why it was important for me after the war. My foundation did a full country census survey of Artsakh and collected evidence of everybody, almost everybody. I would say 95% of the population. We did a survey on loss. Mm-hmm. And that was not done for Baku Armenians, and that was not used, right? So Azeris were using their refugees as a pawn, as a tool to build their alliances and their foreign policy, but Armenia didn't even acknowledge we existed. I had to myself organize across the world events for the 30th anniversary of Baku, and few embassies did it, but it was this is not this is chronic. This is not just this administration.
You know how there have been initiatives to document the properties lost during the genocide. Is there such a initiative for the Baku Armenian community that you know of? You said, for example, 50,000 apartments or properties were lost. Is there any evidence gathering at this point in time, if not 30 years ago?
There were all of a sudden after the war, people were interested, to talk to me, there has been a collection of stories. And Marina Grigoryan did the Ordinary Genocide Initiative and collected stories of Baku Armenians around the world. It was not scientific. It was a journalist, right? So it wasn't social workers going and talking to people about their physical, psychological impact or lawyers. And there was no effort. Then there were some stories collected, but it was not comprehensive. And so now, 30 years later, you have people who died, people moved. It would take millions of dollars to collect that. No one's interested. I mean, they weren't even interested in autopsies. At the time of this is happening, I'm asking, are there any effort to collect this documentation? And the government said no. Armenian government said no. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do this for history's sake. If we can't get some compensation for these properties lost, or these limbs lost, or these families devastated, then at least we know what happened in Hadrut and Shushi, the things that we don't know that happened during the Armenian genocide and during Baku pogroms.
Right.
Right. I'm always concerned with the fact that the Armenian government doesn't express an interest in various Armenian community lives, for example, the Baku Armenians. And now we've lost the Hadrut community, and now the Artsakh community is at what point does the Armenian government stand up and say, these communities are very important and every life is important?
Yeah, and when we say Armenian government, I think you are absolutely right that there needs to be leadership.
And every Armenian government, not just this current Pashinyan, but every government.
But it needs to be a center of direction. The national, I always talk about our Azerbaijan knows exactly what they want. They have a national interest that they have defined, where Armenia never had. It was personal interest, whoever's running it. And the same with Armenian diaspora organizations. I will put them on full blast that Artsakh was not a priority to many of them who are now fundraising for Artsakh. In fact, I call them out personally, because I was the one that was told Artsakh is not a priority to us for years. And now they are suddenly, it is when it's too late. But I think it also comes from the direction needed to come from Armenian government. What is the priority? And that wasn't done. But at the same time, and Artsakh was in a self-preservation mode. And I get that. But when I was interested in collecting Baku Armenian community to kind of start surveying them, I think it was maybe 5-7 years ago, I was told by Artsakh government representative that maybe this is not a good idea, because then Azerbaijan will try to use their Lachin residents as a tool against Artsakh. And so, well, they do it anyway. Why wouldn't we? So why wouldn't we do that? So it was a lot of sitting on the hands and not doing anything, or wait and see, or we're in a good spot, so wait and see. And time was lost, opportunities were lost, and people's lives, like my family, Baku Armenians are just so tired of thinking of, we've lost so much. Forget our homes, but our relatives, we don't know. Our relatives spread all over the world. I don't know my cousins. My second cousins live in Russia. I have no idea who they are, as people. So, it's on a very personal level to me. And now you have the same thing happening. For what? For what? I have no idea.
Anna, you mentioned a little bit about your foundation, and besides the project about collecting sort of information and talking to, essentially gathering information, what other initiatives are you currently involved in? And actually, when did you decide to start the foundation in the first place? What drove you to do that?
Yeah, I didn't want to be that woman that was, collecting money. I didn't want, just because I was advocating for Artsakh, I didn't want money to be connected to it. So my first initiatives were always political presentations and speeches all over the world. And then with fame, right, the social media fame, came a lot of people who were saying, you're seeing all this devastation and need in Armenian Artsakh, why won't you do something? So I started connecting for the 30th anniversary of Sumgait, we planted a forest with Armenia Tree Project in Tallinn, Armenia. And we had a Hajj car for Baku Armenians. And so to me, it was future, the forest, and the past, the commemoration. So I was doing a lot of these types of projects before the foundation. So border posts, solar panels for Artsakh border posts, Armat computer laboratory in Stepanakert, renovation of bathrooms and, in Hunzaresk. School and things like that would, in memory of, but connected to the future. When I was raising more than $100,000 at a time, my accountant said, it's important that you start a foundation so that it's not connected to me in any way, and that I could be transparent with the donors. And so, I was in Artsakh January of 2020. In Shushi, actually meeting with the culture minister, and we were talking about, I'm going to start a foundation. The first project I wanted to do was a project for my dad. He's an artist, and I wanted to do a art competition for the children. And so we started setting up the foundation in April, I want to say, of 2020. And then Tavush hit. So that project for the children was put on hold. And we built 2 bomb shelters after Tavush attacks. And I was about to build a 3rd shelter in Tavush when the war started. And so, the foundation was not legally set up, but clearly it was about to be. So it was, I think, November of 2020 when it was legal and set up as a 501c3. It's a charity. So it didn't come out of the war. It was kind of a long 10-year process.
Right.
But I mean, my Astvatsaturian.org is where all my projects are. You could see the variety of them, and like eye surgeries for villagers in Karashen and Hunzaresk, glasses, building, planting, and just a variety of things. And right now, the biggest one was definitely after the war was the collection of data. We hired about 300 hired and trained. It was the Association of Social Workers of Armenia implemented this project for me. We trained and hired 250 to 300 social workers. They kind of came and went because it was traumatic work. But before the war, there were no social workers in Artsakh, and now there are because of this project. So not only did we get this data, it was about 8-month project. 8-month process to collect it. There were about 350 questions. But it was also training, and now a faculty of social work is being established at Artsakh State University because there wasn't one before.
Right.
And so after the war, when the data was analyzed, I talked to Artsakh Beglaryan about, what can I do? I'm not a big foundation. I can't build homes for everyone. But he mentioned we wanted to support the birth rate. So the birth rate went up 36% since October of last year. And I've wanted to do this project for 6 years. I thought it was very cute. I heard Finland was giving out since 1930s boxes to every newborn in their country. And I thought, why not do that in Artsakh? But there was always something more important. So now that birth rate is so important for Artsakh, we implemented a project called Ser Artsakh. It's on my website if anyone is interested, but it's providing every newborn in Artsakh with a large box of all the necessary items, all made in Armenia. And the things we couldn't make in Armenia are purchased in Armenia. Mm-hmm. Each box, it costs about $110. We're asking for $100 donations for them. And so far, I was just calculating it. I think since June 1st, it was launched June 1st, the International Children's Day. We provided, I think, 313 in 2 months, but I think 360 boxes today.
Nice. Wow. Okay. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a team. It's very smooth. The most women are working on this project, volunteers.
Yeah. And coincidentally, just in the last month, I've had at least 2 queries from our listeners to talk more about supporting families and supporting birth rates, actually. What do you think can be done by people and by the diaspora to support this?
Well, this is not just a donation, right? It's a gift. And like in this box, we have everything up to 6 months worth of clothing, diapers, wipes, thermometer, pacifier. It is literally everything a family needs for a newborn for a few months. It's huge help. And $110 is a lot of money in Armenian Artsakh. Mm-hmm. So that way they could spend money on other things, whether it's rebuilding their damaged home or something that just takes their mind off of it. I think a lot of it is also morale. That box is beautiful, and I have a note in there to mother thanking her for staying in the homeland and giving birth and being so courageous to stay with a child in Artsakh. It is morale boosting because right now there's security concerns, huge future concerns, what's going to happen. And so it affects the health. I mean, going through Baku pogroms and the violence in Azerbaijan, Baku Armenians have had, almost every family I know from Baku, early deaths, cancer. My dad had 2 heart attacks and cancer. I have health issues. So like that kind of stress affects not just birth rate, it affects birth, size,
quality of life,
weight of the children, quality of life, yes, but like, and that has never been done. That study has never been done of how that environment affects Artsakh, something I advocated that they do to advocate to international organizations, and they never did. And I wonder if it was because of strategy. Well, we're strong, we don't want to appear weak. Well, that didn't work for us, right? So now it's supporting families. I mean, I'm not the one to give out $100 to people because it's an easy thing. I want to make sure that like these Armenian businesses I'm supporting through this box are Armenian made items. And it's not something that it supports Artsakh businesses too. So this box to me was kind of a message to Artsakh, message to diaspora. All these photos of babies that I'm posting on social media, those are real people. It's not just territory we lost, it's humans, 360 new ones, and it's also supporting the Armenian businesses. So that is the only way that I can do it. Obviously, there are organizations that are rebuilding homes or rebuilding homes that were abandoned for 30 years. That's important too. So if you have a lot of money that you want to impact, several families, I'm sure that Artsakh government would appreciate it.
Yeah. Anna, I know your focus is humanitarian, but Berzor is on the top of our minds right now. So, as you know, the residents of the villages in that region were given until August 25 to vacate. I wanted to get your impression about the entire situation. You know, what is your understanding of what's happening? Because we are scratching our heads.
Well, what's happening is what was agreed upon. This was agreed upon to be handed over. Armenia had an understanding, it was 2023, that this road, this region was going to be handed over. And now, from what my understanding is that the road, and I saw it in October when I was there. It wasn't there; I couldn't see it. But in July, when I was traveling, I could see the alternate road being built by Azerbaijan. So they were connecting Artsakh to Armenia through Kornizor, I think it's called, the village.
Yeah,
It's unique. So that road is built, but now apparently Armenia just started construction August 3rd because Azerbaijan was putting pressure to expedite it. So why was Armenia not thinking about this 3 years ago or 2 years ago when the war ended, knowing full well that our Artsakh was going to be isolated, blockaded, and not build the road right away, waiting until the last minute, and knowing that I was hearing early on, when people were asking about Agavno, villages in Agavno, they needed this, they needed that, and I would ask, like, what is the government saying? Well, the government was saying we don't want to build anything there, we don't want to invest anything there because we don't know you're going to be, we don't know what the future holds. Well, I think they knew what the future held, and they just didn't communicate that, which I'm just, as a Baku refugee, I'm thinking on the family side, like on the level of a family. How could you not communicate that to families that stayed there, and instead of building their lives elsewhere, you could have set them up somewhere else? So I have a lot of anger about that rather than about, obviously I'm upset that the village, the land is being handed over, but it doesn't surprise me. What surprises me and continues to surprise me.
I couldn't agree more.
Is that Armenians are surprised. The other people are surprised.
Earlier, and I don't want to get too political on this show, but earlier when you said Armenia knew or something, I am not sure Armenia knew. Maybe the government, Pashinyan and his team knew, but they, like you said, they did not communicate.
Well, Arek Harutyunyan up until the last second was saying maybe we can get to keep Agamno. No, they're actually doing another dangerous thing. They're saying we might be able to come back to Agamno.
Right. So don't destroy the buildings, etc.
And I just want to add to what you said. At the minimum, what happened is Azerbaijan escalated the timeline, right?
Right.
They, the head of the National Security Council of Armenia says publicly that, we have another 1.5 years because at least the deadline to rebuild or reroute the communications is until the 3 years after the signing. And that's just the plan, not the building. So there seems to be some additional force applied by Aliyev. Maybe he's pushing, he's basically pushing the envelope, knowing he can. But again, our governments should have expected this if they haven't. And we're hearing in our discussions with a lot of experts and a lot of people who are, in connection with many of these government representatives, that the Armenian government knew that this is going to happen. They knew that as soon as Azerbaijan finished that road, they were going to demand it. In fact, Aliyev publicly said that months ago, said as soon as that road is built, he publicly gave that deadlines. He said, I'm going to put like a flag in Lachin or Bertov on July 1st, even. So he's behind schedule.
Well, the thing that continues to strike me. I mean, I grew up in the United States, and I'm in risk management in banking. And to me, it's once you know what the risk is going to be, why are you not working toward a resolution? Especially when you have affected humanitarian disaster and affected families, civilians, children. There are 38,000 children in Artsakh. From the census that. Now more because of the birth rate, but when we did the census after the war, and why would you not work immediately toward having a corridor for them to have supplies, especially in the winter months? So now they're building it. So to me, To me, it's what's signed is signed. I cannot change it. I don't know what happened. I don't know when it was signed over. What I'm worried about, and I have always been worried about, is families in Artsakh. A lot of them are my friends. A lot of them are Baku refugees who lost their homes in Baku and now lost their homes in Shushi. And who is answering to them? Right. In the end, it is, you can blame Azerbaijan all you want, but you know what you're dealing with. In the end, you have to start blaming yourself for not being prepared 20 years ago, not being prepared 2 years ago, and not being prepared now. Right.
Okay. And to close off our conversation, Anna, as you mentioned, you're already a published author. Your book in 2012, Nowhere, Story of Exile, is highly rated on Amazon. And now we hear that you have a new book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit on what it's about and what drove you to write it?
Well, unfortunately, my new book is, I stopped writing it. I almost finished it right before the war. And I just, I really couldn't find the voice and the energy and the spirit to finish it. So I put it on the back burner. When I was doing a couple of press conferences a few years right after the war, a publisher contacted me about publishing my original book in Armenian, because they felt that the Armenian youth, the Armenian public, really does not understand the impact of what happened in Baku 30 years ago on what's happening now. And so the book was translated. So it's Nowhere, a Story of Exile, coming out in Armenian. It was important to me to translate it to Russian, but now it's coming out in Armenian in the fall.
Okay, nice. So, and you will be here, I guess, for the
launch, yes, and for the
books.
Here, you mean in Yerevan?
Yeah, sorry.
I will be in Yerevan, and I hope all this 2 years I've been doing is just, taking care of these families in Artsakh, and many of them in Armenia, taking care of my grandfather's village in Hinzaresk. So I just kind of threw myself there, and the writing part is like, that's how I kind of de-stress. I haven't had an opportunity to de-stress to write. So it's go all the time. And at one point when things start to normalize, whenever that is, I'll finish my current book.
Okay. Understood.
I promise.
Absolutely. Good luck and more power to you.
All right, Anna. Well, I want to thank you for your time today, and also thank you for all your efforts to help Armenians in Artsakh and everywhere. We really appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you so much. And for those who want to help, Astvatsaturian.org is where you can find all the information on my projects and how to contact me if you're interested. Thank you.
We will put a link to that one in both the show notes and under the video.
Thank you.
All right, that's our show today. As always, we really want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter and like our Facebook page. Go, go, go. We'll talk to you soon.